Welcome to a new episode of The Brand Called You. Today I have a very accomplished corporate leader, Sunil D'Souza, with me. Sunil, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashutosh.
So,
Glad to be here.
thank you. Sunil is an engineer and an MBA from IIM Calcutta. He's currently the managing director and CEO of Tata Consumer Products, and just before that, he was the managing director of Whirlpool India. Sunil, tell me a little bit about your early life, your early learnings, and some of your challenges.
Early life, basically, my dad used to work for the Atomic Energy. Bhabha Atomic Research Center was where I grew up. So grade 1 to 12, walked for about 5 to 10 minutes to school. So that was in the shelter of campus. After that, stepped out, did my engineering, worked for a couple of years before I figured out being an engineer would not get me far enough. Went back to do my management. In those days, finance was in vogue, but I chose to do marketing and then joined Hindustan Lever. That time they recruited as a group. They sent me to Lipton. Moved a couple of times after that, Standard Chartered, Coke, PepsiCo, 15 years with PepsiCo, Whirlpool, and now finally Tata Consumer Products. So that's the critical thing is I think I have always tried to do what I would love to do. It's not, like I said, even in campus, I mean, finance was in vogue, but I did marketing. Even when I moved roles or jobs, I've either accepted or rejected basis what I would love to do. There was one mistake in my career which I made when I didn't follow this principle. For a very brief period, when I quit Hindustan Lever, at that time it was Lipton, Brook Bond Lipton, I moved to Standard Chartered Bank, which was setting up credit cards in India.
Okay.
I quickly realized that is not the banking culture, etc., was not something I would fit in. And then I came back to the consumer field very quickly.
Or as they would say, that wasn't your cup of tea.
Absolutely right.
Okay, so moving on, Sunil, you spent a very large part of your life with FMCG. Then you spent, building a consumer durable brand in Whirlpool. With so much experience in FMCG, tell me what goes into building a successful brand.
It is not one ingredient itself, Ashutosh. A lot of people will talk about doing strategy right or doing positioning right, making great products. I think getting the whole marketing mix right. I think that is a critical piece. So all the pieces have to come together perfectly. The other piece is, a lot of emphasis is laid on strategy, but I would say strategy and execution have to go hand in hand. You will get some way by doing execution and not strategy, but you will get nowhere by doing only strategy and no execution. I think getting that balance right is also critical. And the last piece I would say is keeping a focus on people. Ultimately, it is people who make the difference. A motivated team, ambitious and hungry, I think that is the other key.
Wonderful. And it's often been said that brands are living beings. They're like children. The more nurturing you give them, the better they get, right? But the brands that you have worked for have lasted for centuries, if I can use, or certainly for many decades. What ingredients are needed for a brand to stay relevant for a long period of time?
No, so you're right. I mean, people just because a brand is old doesn't mean it goes away. I think there the Darwinian law applies. It's not the fittest and the strongest to survive. It is the easiest to adapt. I think brands have to constantly look around, whether it is their consumers, whether it is their supply chains, whether it is the distribution channels. I think they've got to constantly figure out what it is that they need to change about themselves to make themselves relevant. And as long as you keep doing that, I think you will continue to chug along. I mean, I can give you the examples of Coke and Pepsi, right? They've stayed relevant through the years and they've made the right amount of changes. We've got the company that I work for, Tata Consumer Products. We've got Tetley, we've got 8 o'clock, 160, 180-year-old brands, and they're still going strong. But new product innovation, new ways of communication, making sure you're getting you're tweaking your target segment from time to time to stay relevant. I think those are the critical pieces.
Wonderful. So before I move further, tell me a little bit about Tata Consumer Products. What are the brands you have in your portfolio?
Tata Consumer Products, the big brands in India are Tata Tea and Tata Salt. We've just acquired PepsiCo's 50% stake in our joint venture and taken on the liquid part of the portfolio. So we have Himalayan, Tata Water Plus and Tata Gluco Plus. Those are still fledgling. I think we've got a way to go before we say that they're strong, powerful brands. Then we've got in our foods business, we've got this new emerging Tata Sampann, which is in the kitchen food ingredient brand, if I may. Internationally, we've got 8 O'Clock coffee in the US. We've got Tetley, which is in about 45 countries around the world. We've got another tea brand in the US called Good Earth, which is into the new age teas, if I may. And in the UK, we've got a premium brand called Tea Pigs. So, yeah, a large number of brands around. The critical piece is to make sure that we get each one right, both on strategy and execution.
Very true. So, that's an interesting segue into my next question, which is, this is the world of digital, this is the digital world. What is needed for a brand to succeed in the digital world?
I think firstly, let me paraphrase by saying that, like I said, you've got to get all pieces of the marketing mix right. So assuming that you've got it right, I think there are two critical things that brands have to remember when they move to the digital world. One is a piece on communication, the other is a piece on commerce, right? You've got to make sure that your media pieces are well aligned to catch your consumer where the consumer is. Right. And the second piece is what e-commerce allows a consumer to do is shop the world at their fingertips. I think making sure that you get those pieces right and adapt to the changing consumer. For example, in appliances, in China, about 40% of appliances are sold online. Right. In India, the percentage was about 1 to 2% about 5 years back. Today, I would say it is north of 9 and 10. Wow. Yeah, and that piece moves very rapidly. So you've got to keep a close eye. Those capabilities are not very easy to build. A lot of times you've got to go find digital natives, the younger generation, to actually come in and really transform the digital, both the communication and the commerce pieces.
Okay. So again, next question is really on the e-commerce platforms. When I was growing up in ITC, it was all about making sure the supply chain was strong, which is still the case. But it was all about making sure it was available at the local panwala. Now, the single largest buyer seems to have become an e-commerce platform. How is distribution, marketing, and brands adapting to these e-commerce platforms?
I think, Ashutosh, the basics of execution don't change very much. It's just a different channel, right? So, like you said, availability is critical. So is it on e-commerce. You don't have availability for a couple of days. Next day, the social media will all be buzzing about it and everyone knows. So you've got to be extremely mindful, agile and quick to participate on the e-commerce platforms. The second piece, I think, critical thing is, or two pieces. Information is widely available. So it is not that you walk into the Kirana store and say, I just want to buy a pack of biscuits or I want to buy a pack of tea, and the fellow just places that brand in front of you. Correct. Today, the consumer, especially with the digital media and e-commerce sites, is extremely aware and therefore more targeted on which brand to go for. So recommendation is not the Kirana stores. It is the consumer deciding more by crowdsourcing, if I may call it. Correct. The second piece is price transparency. I think in very many categories, there is a huge difference between what the offline retailer buys and the price at which they sell. And even if they say they're giving you a discount, there's still an hefty margin out there. Correct. I think the e-commerce platforms are pushing margins lower and lower so that the consumer is the net beneficiary. I think that is the other critical piece to remember.
Correct. But, the fact that there is such a large amount of discounting that goes on, is this sustainable for brands?
Ashutosh, a lot of discounting is not necessarily by the brand, it is also by the platform. As the platforms are running after eyeballs or GMVs or whatever you may call it, I mean, they are also the ones who are putting money out of their pockets to make sure they attract. They use this loss leader concept phenomenally well.
Correct.
all these big sales which happen, etc. Not necessarily that they're dipping into their pockets all the time, and not necessarily that brands are dipping into the pockets all the time, but discounts, a decent portion comes out of the margins, and like what I said, they operate with far slimmer margins, and a decent enough portion comes from brands, but also from the pockets of the retailers themselves.
Very interesting. So the next question to you, Sunil, is that the role of analytics. I mean, I remember when I was growing up. Again, it was a 13-column sheet which evolved into a Lotus 1, 2, 3. But today, everything is numbers. How important is analytics for brands? And the follow-up question is, are we overdoing it?
I wouldn't comment on the overdoing. There could be people overdoing, but I couldn't underemphasize or overemphasize the importance of data and analytics.
Okay.
Because theoretically, Ashutosh, in today's world, especially with the digital footprints of people, you can have a target segment of one, right? You don't have to say 28 to 35-year-old, male, urban. You can actually say, I want to target Mr. Ankur Shah sitting in Dombivli, right? And then go after that. I mean, that is what analytics can get you if you get it right. And the other thing is, if you get it right and automate it, decision making, which is simple number driven decision making, then you're not relying on people. So huge amount of efficiency can be driven through the systems.
Right. Very interesting. Because, everyone around the world now seems to be only talking analytics. And
so data is the new oil. I would say data is not the new oil. The critical piece is the engines which will use that oil. I think that is where analytics come in. Everyone collects data. The critical thing is, what will you do with that data to fine tune both segmenting and targeting consumers on the front end, as well as driving efficiency through your supply chain and the back end. I think that is the critical piece.
Very interesting. So my next question to you is that, you have so far worked in multinationals who've come into India. Now you are with an Indian company that has gone multinational. Culturally, how are they different? Or how are they similar?
They're not very different. I mean, this is the first time in my working career that I've worked for a non-Western MNC, if I may call it.
Yes.
Yeah. It didn't strike me till very late after I had accepted and ready to join. Oh, this is a change. I am not sure what the future holds. But when you walk in, I think whether it is the caliber of people, whether it is the pedigree, whether it is the work ethics, more importantly, organization ethics, I see no difference. If anything, I would say multinationals that I work for are large, bureaucratic, global, and therefore a lot of layers to tackle and a lot of people and functions to maneuver before you can get decisions. I think if anything, I would say the Tata Consumer Products and the whole Tata Group, my initial impression is, as long as you've got your logic right, decision making can become far, far faster.
Okay. That's a very, very interesting perspective. So my next question to you is, I've asked for many people, and I myself have been an expat outside India for many, many years. In your opinion, what makes Indians such good expatriate managers around the world?
So I would say it's about 3-4 things. Yeah. Number one is we are a billion plus people, right? So right from day one, you've got to compete, whether it's for the seat in the school, the job that you have, or the exams that you write. I mean, for anything and everything, nothing comes on a platter. You've got to figure out your way, push your way through, and then survive, if I may call it. And that's what helps, that spirit of constantly competing, constantly moving forward. That's one. The second one is, when you say India, I would say it is many Indias, right? I had a boss who once said, when I had asked him in Vietnam, I mean, you don't understand the language, the food is different. Yeah, all the cultural nuances are all different. Even the places that you stay are different. I mean, how do you adapt? He said, I'm a Punjabi, because my last posting was in Chennai. You know what? I didn't like the rice. I needed my rotis. I couldn't read a single shop board. I couldn't understand what the retailer said. The clothes were different. You know what? What's different about Chennai and Vietnam? Nothing, right? So that's the second piece. And the third piece is, I think, given India's history and the way we've had to deal with bureaucracy and systemic lethargy, if I may, and still make things work, especially in the corporate world. I think that enables you to say that, I mean, I know how to tackle things, I can be persistent, and I will move things. So these 2, 3 things, I think, were Indian expats in good stead when they move out.
That's very well explained. Thank you. So my next question to you is a question that is, I think, asked all the time by every individual when they move jobs. What is better? Is it better to stay for a long period of time with one organization, or is it better to keep moving jobs, as in when you keep getting an opportunity to get a bigger role?
See, both have their pros and cons, Ashutosh. I wouldn't say one is better, one is worse. Yeah. For example, if you stay in an organization for a long time, you understand the organization inside out, you've built the right skill set to survive and thrive within that organization. Every organization has politics, right? And you know what are the politics and how to tackle it. You understand whom do I have to move to get what decision, who are the powers that be who will decide business as well as my career sort of things. So that's the advantages there. On the other side, moving jobs, I would say it makes you much more adaptable because you understand each organization is different and all the pieces that I mentioned, decision makers, politics, culture, hierarchy, all those pieces, you quickly learn to adapt. Yeah. So that is the better piece of it. Now, like I said, one or the other is not better or worse, but the one thing that especially I look out for, or I make sure that I do not get into recruiting people is person who's moving too quickly, right? So people should have stayed decent amounts of time in an organization before moving on. Else, jumping non-stop is not a good thing, I would say.
Very good, very good. So my last question to you on work before I move to some personal questions. This is the age of millennials and now the Gen Zs are coming in. How are these young people who have a very different mind from what I certainly had, how are they changing working conditions and the way you do your work?
I think, Ashutosh, it is critical that the organizations change to stay in tune with the times, because ultimately this is the workforce that you have to attract. These are the people who are going to build the company for the future, right? Very many things about the work culture itself, whether it is flexible hours, work from home is now, you figured out that everyone can make it work. I mean, in COVID times, locations, I mean, in a lot of the Western countries, it was always a done thing, say that you live in San Francisco but work in New York, right? And take the red eye, come back. The new generation is using that. So you can't push for locations very easily. Right. The second piece is from a brand perspective, right? Organizations which have sustainability at the core of their brands, which have cause marketing at the heart of their marketing programs. I think the younger generation is much more tuned to that rather than people of my genre or older. And the third one is, I think this is a very, the generations which are coming in are not going to stay with an organization for a long time just because it's a good name or it's got good brands. They're also looking for careers, learning, contributing, etc. So having very clear, thought through career roadmaps for people, I think is the other critical piece. Not going with the old time, this thing of, you know, you do 5 years in this role and 3 years in this role. And so you've got to have a very clear, if you achieve ABC, then you move to this job or this role or this position. I think that is the other piece which organizations need to get clear.
Very, very good. So let me move to a few personal questions now. You know, the first one you said was, when I was reading about you, you said that you like tinkering with stuff. Tell me more.
So let me say I'm an engineer by profession originally, and therefore I'm curious. I would like to figure out how things work. Yeah, a lot of times when I take things apart, then ultimately when I put them back, they don't work. That's a different matter. Okay. Also, you know, I have this inherent this thing of not liking something which is not working or not right. And I would try and fix it, whether it is software, whether it is some electronic stuff, or even just plain sticking and putting stuff together. And for me, it is also a stress buster, if I may. Yeah, it takes your mind off everything else and puts focus only on that piece. And then you come back and it's like Control Alt Del on all the thoughts that were running in your head.
Okay, well said. The next question is that, over the years, are there any specific people who've had an influence on you? And if yes, what have you learned from them? Give me 2 examples.
I would say one is on the personal front. Personal front is my dad. So his work ethic, his family orientation, and importance for education. I mean, my dad was a post-grad in that.
And a nuclear scientist, you said. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, that had a huge bearing on my life about what I want to do, how I would do it, and education, etc. Second piece on the work front, I would say 2 people I would mention. One is Tim Mingus, who was then Asia president at a point in time in PepsiCo, and Mark Bitzer, who's the current CEO of Whirlpool globally.
Okay.
I think these 2 people, so 2 things about them which I mean, I look up to. A, their ability to move 60,000 feet as well as 6 feet, I would say, getting the strategy right, but at the same time on the ground to make sure execution is right. I think that's one piece. Second, both humble but hungry people. So I would say these are the two qualities about them which I keep looking up to.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what would be the 3 adjectives that describe Sunil?
I would say A, analytical. I would like to think through, look at data, look at different sources before jumping to any conclusion. Yeah, I use gut, but layered upon data, not gut alone.
Okay.
Second is people. I would like to think that the people I work for, people who work for me, think of me as more than a boss, more as a friend whom they can reach out to, who will be happily putting the shoulder to the wheel if they need it.
Okay.
And the third piece is, I think, execution.
Okay.
Sunil can follow through and make sure the last nail is bolted on right.
Wonderful, wonderful. So moving on, one of the things that I have often said is that in India, we don't like to talk of failure. And yet, all of us fail several times. So my question to you is, what are some of your learnings from some of your mistakes or failures?
So I think I alluded to it earlier, the one mistake in my career. And I said, I think the critical thing is I would rather do what I like to do rather than get into a more glamour, money, or something which hits the headlines, right? And that one mistake which I did when I was looking to move out of Hindustan Lever that time, Lipton, was it sounded glamorous, Standard Chartered credit cards. Yeah, it looked like consumer business and everything, all the other marketing elements associated with it. But when I moved in, I quickly realized that's not what I want to do and that's not what I like. And then I think that mistake has probably shaped my choices on my career moves through the years. Yeah, so I've always then patiently stepped back, looked at the whole piece before jumping in. So it was probably around a 9-month stint, 9-10 month stint in Standard Chartered. But that was the one mistake in my career which I made, and I think I learned from that.
Okay, wonderful. So my last question to you, and this is, thousands and thousands of people will watch you and me speak, and a lot of youngsters who may have worked for you, who look up to you. My question is that for a young individual starting off life in the corporate world, what would your advice be to them?
So I would say probably I'll leave them with 3 pieces. Number 1, there is no shortcut to success, right? It is plain and simple hard work and putting in the long, hard hours and going through the whole process. Yes, there will be those few and far in between who have achieved got a brilliant idea, commercialized it and achieved success, but the broad majority don't. That's one. Second one is, I would repeat what I said as a personal thing is do what makes you happy.
Okay.
Because ultimately life is a marathon, right? It is not a 100-meter sprint. It is a series of runs which you've got to do the long haul.
Right.
So for that, make sure that you're always happy doing what you're doing. Don't fall for the latest fad or the biggest thing which is around the corner. Number 3 is as you move on in life, ultimately it's all about people. Remember that, whether it is your peer group or whether it's the people who work for you or initially the people you work for, you have to learn from them. Ultimately, when you reach higher levels, the people that work for you have to look up to you and see you as a friend more than a boss, see you as a leader and a friend. So these are the 3 critical things I would say I would leave people with.
Wonderful. Sunil, thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for all your wise comments and words. I wish you lots and lots of success with Tata Consumer Products.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.